Welcome to the VCOS webinar series. You are in for a treat today as you're going to listen and learn and interact with Chief Gary Ludwig, who's going to talk about leadership lessons learned from the past. And if you ever think about it, the most written topic in the world is about leadership. And it goes all the way back to the beginning of mankind. It's about leadership. So we'll get started in a minute. I got to do the political things. Those of you that have been here before know we got a few things to do. We do have a recorded version. We hope that you will share it with others in through your social media. We hope maybe you see some interesting stuff that maybe you'll use it at an officers meeting or something like that. But we encourage you to use the recorded version and ask questions. I should have had this slide taken out because as of about 2 days ago, the National Firefighter Registry for Cancer was furloughed. We're not sure if it's permanently furloughed or maybe just short term, but it's been furloughed, so you can't really do the cancer registry at this particular point in time. So, but as we know, cancer is the number one killer of firefighters. Billy Goldfeder created this 40plusfire.com after he contracted prostate cancer. He's now coming up on 3 years of a clean report. But his point is to the men in this room: women, breast cancer. Men, don't wait till you're 50. Maybe do a prostate exam when you're 40. If the history is in your family, don't wait. For the volunteer firefighters that may be listening to this, don't forget to tell your doctor that you are a firefighter, because most of you say on your employment you'll go plumber, teacher. They don't even know that you're a firefighter. They don't even know that you're exposed to all these carcinogens. So you have to tell the doctor, because they may decide to treat you a little bit differently that way. We want you to attend Symposium in the Sun, November 13th through the 16th in Clearwater Beach, Florida. Oh my gosh, why don't you want to come to Clearwater Beach in November? Well, Gary's been there a couple times. Well, maybe you'll experience a hurricane, as we did a couple years ago. As we introduced the keynote speaker, the hurricane hit the transformer right outside the building, and we're without power. But fortunately, the hotel could adapt to that, and 30 minutes later, we were back on the road. Only had one projector, but we were back on the road. So if you haven't ever been to Symposium in the Sun, we encourage you to come. There are scholarships available. So those of you say, well, I can't afford to do it, there are scholarships that we don't always get a lot of applications for. So if you have a financial assistance need, go to the vcos.org website and look for the scholarships that are available to attend Symposium in the Sun. I am a big proponent of training, as Gary is. I won't tell you his story about when he went to his last fire department about training. He might share it with you a little bit later. But we have the IFC has an online training program that is equivalent to all the other online training programs. It's called Workforce Solutions. And if you're needing to develop yourself or the officers on your department, go to Workforce Solutions and gain access to it free of charge, whether you're an IFC member or not. So don't use the excuse that you didn't pay dues. That's not acceptable. So there's lots of good training on that Workforce Solutions website. We have a new program out. It's going to be field tested in about 3 weeks in Pennsylvania, and it's called the Critical Thinking Academy. As we learn and we listen to firefighters and realize that incident commanders, chief officers don't always think critically about the problems that they're facing. So we brought some really good people together, developed a program. It's been tested once in Symposium in the Sun. Now it's going to be tested for real. It does require a commitment, personal time commitment. It's 3 weekends spread out over a 12-month period. The training at this point in time is free of charge. So keep your eyes open as we start to expand that and look for places that you might be able to go to the Critical Thinking Academy. The VCOS has numerous educational deliveries that we make. This one here is about labor management. If you have labor management issues and you like somebody to come in and help, and I just be real blunt, referee the problem, The VCOS has developed a program that's aimed at volunteer labor, career labor, and management to try to resolve their differences and get along so that everybody is somewhat satisfied. And I did say somewhat satisfied because we all know you can't totally satisfy people. Beyond Hoses and Helmets, a class that we've been doing since about 1994. It has been through several updates. It's not the same as it was in 1994, but it's about putting the pieces together for recruitment and retention. So I encourage you, if you want these kind of training programs, all you got to do is go to the vcos.org website and request them, or you can email me and I'll get you on the list. So I'm the one that coordinates those kind of things. So what does the VCOS do for you? IFC as well. We got the Fire Rescue International in August in Orlando, Florida. Well, we're going to go down there in the heat. VCOS monitors legislation. We have a tremendous partnership with the National Volunteer Fire Council. I didn't mean that, it's not that we agree on everything, but we get along. We sit down at the table. We argue. Not say argue. We argue the issues. Yeah, we do. We argue the issues. We debate them. So we watch NFPA standards. We have several people that are sitting on NFPA standards that's representing the volunteer and combination officer section. If you are a member of the section, you do get a newsletter once a quarter. And we have a social media program, and we have ribbon reports that are free. If you want to see some of the things that we're doing, some of the things that we have written, Google Yellow Ribbon Report, Lavender Ribbon Report, Red Ribbon Report, and you can get those free of charge whether we want, or whether you're a member or whether you're not. So I will go make a comment to my technology person, Sherry, who's in the background, so we can switch the slide to the different program there. Because now it's time for me to introduce Gary Ludwig. Gary and I became friends totally by accident. And it really was my accident. They were doing a disaster drill in St. Louis, Missouri, which is like 2.5 hours from my house. Actually, I can get to St. Louis without any stoplights. Leave my house and be in St. Louis with no stoplights. And I went to a disaster drill and I left my brand new leather helmet in the hotel room. The only person who gave me a business card was Gary Ludwig. And I called him up and said, man, can you go to the hotel and get that? And, I'll come over this weekend and get it. And he goes, oh, no, I'll go get it and I'll ship it to you. A couple of days later, it showed up with UPS. So that's how we started long before either one of us were involved with the International Association of Fire Chiefs. And so, we've had a long history, friendly history, and it's been a great relationship for me. So let's get into Gary. I'm not going to introduce all the things he's done, but he has been chief officer most recently in Champaign, Illinois, chief officer in Memphis, Tennessee, chief paramedic and chief officer in St. Louis, Missouri. And he's written, I think, over 200 columns in Firehouse Magazine. He is a prolific writer. He is a prolific researcher. It's not just writing. He researches things very heavily. So with that, I want to turn it over to Gary and say, okay, Gary, knock him dead.
Hey, thanks, John. And what an honor it is to be here with everybody this afternoon. And I just want to echo all my thoughts about John also. What a gentleman, what a scholar, what an officer, what a professional. We can go on. And lastly, what a friend he is to me. And he has been a friend to me all these years. And then little did I know that I would follow in his footsteps one day, since we both have served as president of the IFC. He served during that tumultuous time and those challenging times of 9/11, when 9/11 happened back in 2001. And then little did I know that I'd be serving as the IFC president during the pandemic and all the civil unrest. So John was certainly a mentor to me that I could call up and talk to him about a lot of the issues that were happening during his tenure and how they would impact me, and just all the things that are not written in any book anywhere. And John, I above all, thank you for all your help in my career. And lastly, thank you for being such a good friend to me.
You're welcome.
And a leader. I'll just say that John is a leader. Talk about leadership. And that's what we're talking about today, is leadership. And, we all do the traditional leadership things. We take the leadership classes. We read the leadership books. Leadership 101. We go to the National Fire Academy, and leadership is theirs. as John said, leadership is the most written about subject ever. Just go to Amazon and see how many books you can find on leadership, or find out how many books that are written by individuals who have been in leadership positions, and they talk about either their autobiography or their biography, and as a result of that, they're talking about leadership lessons that they have been involved in. So it is unique, and I'm not going to bore you today with, oh, here's some more leadership stuff that you probably have heard before. I wanted to give you something that you may not have heard of before. And that's why today's session is called Leadership Lessons That You May Never Have Heard of Before. And we're going to talk about some of the things that I have researched, and John just spoke about that. I have research. I love doing research. I sit in front of my computer untold amount of hours just Googling stuff and researching stuff, and artificial intelligence has just been a godsend for me. I was sitting here today wanting to know about some information, and instead of Googling, I just typed it in and it spit out all this information for me. So artificial intelligence has certainly made research quite easy nowadays. So I put the compilation together of a bunch of leadership lessons that you have never probably heard of before. Chances are you may have heard of one or two of these, or you might remember, but I'll bet you there's going to be some things here today that you have never heard before. So with that said, I'm going to kick off into the first one, and I'm going to advance the slide here. I'm going to talk about Abraham Lincoln's hot letters. Now, tell you what, this is what I'm guilty of. At least I was, until I matured to a level that I knew I can't do this anymore. When you get angry and when you get emotional, sometimes we put things in emails, or we say things that we just go, oh my God, I can't believe I wrote that. I can't believe I hit the send button. I can't believe that I basically have, put it out there, and now I regret. Then all of a sudden the remorse kicks in and the regret kicks in that you said something, or that you sent an email. And I was guilty of this one time in my career, that I just truly regret that I sent an email in an emotional state. But Abraham Lincoln was known for what is termed his hot letters. His hot letters were, he would write these blistering, of course he didn't have email back then, but he would write these blistering letters to someone when he was angry and when he was mad. And you know what he did with it? He didn't send it. He put it in a drawer. And when he put it in the drawer, he would wait 3 days, and then he would decide at the end of that third day whether he was going to send a letter or not. One of the most famous ones that is talked about often is that after the Battle of Gettysburg, as you know, the Confederates retreated after a tremendous loss, and they were backed up against the Potomac River, trying to escape into Virginia, back into the South. But the river was flooded and they couldn't get across. And General McClellan kept getting telegrams from Abraham Lincoln, attack that ragtag army that's left, and let's end this war once and for all. He kept sending telegrams, attack, over a period of several days and up to a week later. And as a result of that, General McClellan did not attack. And Lee's army was able to escape across the Potomac River and evade total annihilation. I guess that's the best way to phrase it. Lincoln was mad. He was mad because he wanted to end this war where so many people were dying. And General McClellan did not listen to what he was telling him in telegrams. And he wrote one of these hot letters. And he put it in the drawer, though, for 3 days. And then he thought about it. He pulled the letter out after the third day, and he says, I don't know what it's like to command men in the field that are dying. I've never been there before. I have never experienced that. He went through all kinds of issues why he should not have judged General McClellan and why he did not attack. And guess what he did? He did not send that letter. And so that's not the only letter, again, but these were Lincoln's hot letters, where he would put them in a drawer. And again, he would write on them, never dictated, but never sent, because his secretary would write the letter as he dictated it. So,
Jerry, let me add something to that. There's my former boss, Jim Greason, State Fire Marshal. He always advised me put it away for the weekend, sort of almost like the 3-day program. Is when you write a letter, maybe, and you write a letter like you said, this is a hot letter. It's going to maybe fire people up. Maybe you ought to wait. He always said, just wait the weekend and see if really it's that important, because that's what it becomes in most of our issues. Oh, that's really not that important that I got to get bent out of shape and make you get at the person who's receiving it get bent out of shape, because these kind of letters, again, Jim Greason's comment, incite anger most often in the person that gets it. So again, I think that's great advice. Put it in a desk drawer for 3 days. Think about it and make sure you really want to say what you're going to say. There you go, Gary.
I agree, and I like that advice. Wait a weekend, so where you're focused on other things and you're not sitting there steaming and thinking about it. And I'll tell you, John, it's in my book, Fully Involved Leadership. I talk about, of course, we all grew up learning grammatics, and we all grew up learning English and how to write. And we always learned how to spell, and we always were taught I before E except after C. Well, I've made a slight variation of that. I call it I before E. And what I'm saying with that, for you to remember that, is you should use your intelligence before your emotions. I before E. The only thing I left out was before C. But I before E is something you should always think about. Use your intelligence before your emotion, because we're creatures that we all have emotions. We get upset, we get angry, we get happy, we are joyful. But when we get upset, we want to release that anger. And sometimes we write emotional emails, or we say things that we don't intend to say or we have regret about. So always remember the I before E. And John, I like that advice from your, was it your former boss?
Jim, State Fire Marshal Jim Greason. Yep.
Okay, that's excellent advice. All right, moving on to another lesson you may have never heard of before. So this is a story that comes out of the Revolutionary War. And there's a bunch of Continental soldiers, and they're trying to build a barricade, build a wall that they can use for a defense. And they're using logs. And there are 5 of them. And these are large logs. And it's okay. You get the first log on, you get the second log on top of the first one, the third one on. But it's the higher logs. How do we get that higher log up there? And so these Continental soldiers are trying to get the last log on top of the wall that's going to be used for a defense. And there's a corporal standing there. And he's not doing any manual labor. He's standing there barking orders. Lift this side, move this side, put this wedge in here. He's barking orders. And along comes a man riding along on a horse in civilian clothes, and he sits there and he watches what's going on, where these Continental soldiers are trying to build this wall by getting the last log up on top of the wall. And he's watching this corporal bark orders. And so the man on the horse, he gets off and he walks over, and now he becomes the 6th man to help lift the log up onto the wall. And they are successful. All they needed was an extra person to handle the weight and get it up there. And when they were done, the gentleman put his coat back on and walks over to the corporal and says, why did you not help these soldiers lift that log up on that wall? And the corporal says, well, don't you see, sir? I'm a corporal. I'm in a leadership position. I'm not supposed to do manual labor. I'm here to bark orders and to give them orders to make sure the job is done. And so the gentleman who helped build the wall, who got off his horse, put his coat back on, says to the corporal, fine, the next time you have a problem like that, why don't you call your commander-in-chief? My name is George Washington. And that is a story that is unique in itself, and that is a lesson for us in the fire service. There should be no job that is beneath us as chief officers. We have to do whatever it takes to get the job done and be successful. If that means stepping out of your role being a chief, that's what you have to do. If you have to help your firefighters wash the truck, so be it. If you have to help your firefighters because there's not enough roll-up hose after fire and you've laid out 1,000 feet of 5-inch hose or whatever, and there's a lot of work to be done, just don't get back in your car and drive away. Take off your coat like George Washington did and help them roll up that 1,000 feet of 5-inch. And this is a lesson, again, if the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, General Washington, can get off his horse and help soldiers to lift a log up on the wall, certainly we as chief officers, nothing is beneath us to also get the job done. So that's a lesson in itself.
Gary, when this is the slide that's talking about teamwork. And you can't have a football team without a quarterback. You can't have a football team without the center that actually hikes the ball to the quarterback. It takes everybody doing their part. So when you look at this thinking, okay, I had a conversation yesterday with a captain who can't get one of his firefighters to clean the toilet. He just absolutely refuses to do that. And he's calling me going, what kind of advice did I have? What ideas do I have? And I said, it's pretty simple. Do you empty the toilet or clean the toilet, bathroom? He said, yes, I do. I take my rotation. I said, well, it's pretty simple. That young man has to do that just like everybody else. If he refuses to do it, you need to send the discipline up the chain. Nobody should be exempt from playing a role on the team. And cleaning the bathrooms, as we all know, if you live in a fire station, the bathroom needs to be cleaned at least once a day, in some cases twice a day. But you can't have one person, like in football, you can't have one person going the other way where the offense is going to the left and he or she is going to the right. That will not make you successful. And leading is about success. The things Gary's talked about, we've talked about so far, it's about success of your company, your battalion, and your department. Gary.
All right. Thank you, John. And those are all excellent points. Now I'm going to talk about another leadership thing leadership lesson that you may have never heard about. And I like this one. This is called, Are You a Seagull Manager? So I want you to think about seagull manager. What does Gary talk about? What is a seagull manager? Well, I asked the question, are you a seagull manager? Or do you know someone who's a seagull manager? And I'm going to tell you what a seagull manager is. So put yourself through this filter. This is somebody that only interacts with employees when they suspect there's a problem. And what do? They fly in just like a seagull. They react to only one thing that they've heard, and they have very little understanding of the problem or the situation. And I bet you some of you out there are starting to run through some names in your head, the people that you've either worked with in the past or currently work with, that they react to this only one thing they've heard. So as the manager, just like a seagull, they fly in, they squawk a lot about what they know very little about, only heard one thing. They dump on everybody. And then when they leave, all there is left is a big mess to clean up. So that's what seagull management is basically someone who flies in, you've heard, they fly off the handle, they fly in, they flap their wings, there's feathers flying everywhere, there's also dumping going everywhere, and as birds do, they squawk a lot just like a seagull does, and then they leave. All there is just a mess to clean up after they've been there. So my advice to you is do not be a seagull manager. And if you think you are, just kind of, you need to pivot in a different direction. And again, it goes back to the I before E. Seagull management is based on emotion, not on intelligence. So here we are listening to ourselves, hearing one thing and reacting to it. And I always tell people, use I before E. And I'm going to tell you, one of our biggest problems with being chief officers is that our brains are wired like this. Our brains are wired that when we see a problem, we react to it and fix it. Why? Because we've done it thousands of times in our career. We get on a truck, the tones will go off, there's a problem somewhere. We get on a truck, we go to the scene with lights and sirens, we get there, we find out what the problem is, we decipher the problem, we analyze the problem, we start going through all the slide trays in our head with all the possible solutions. We pick the best solution, we fix it right then and there. whether it's a gas leak or whether it's a medical problem or whether it's a fire or automobile fire or an auto accident, whatever it is, we are using our experience, knowledge, and training to fix that problem. We get back in our truck, we go back to the station. We apply the same principles when we are faced with leadership and management and administrative problems inside the office, because our brains are wired to see a problem and fix it right away. And that is where we get into seagull management, where we think we have all the answers based on a limited amount of information that we have. So don't be a seagull manager.
I think you point out one of the challenges that I see with our leading or managing, or both, is that we are leading because of history. We are leading because that's the way we've always done it. The world is different. Benjamin Franklin created the first volunteer fire company in 1736. The model was neighbors helping neighbors. The volunteer fire department back then did fire prevention and fire suppression. Departments today have changed, but in many cases, we're still using that same staffing model that Ben Franklin created back in 1736. And so it's the same thing with leadership. We lead by the guy or gal who's the leader before. We saw their example and those there. So therefore, we'll do what they did because they were successful. My point is, tradition needs to be broken. The world is a different place. People are motivated differently today than they were 3 years ago, and definitely 5 years ago. When you look at the younger generation today and or the older generation, what is their attention span? So you look at that seagull that seagull flying in. It's only in there for like 2 seconds and it's flying out. I liked your comment about dumping, Gary, because that is really what seagulls do. I had to have my car washed yesterday because it was home most of the day on Sunday, Monday, home most of the day yesterday. I had to have it washed this morning because my wife feeds the birds off the porch. Well, guess what they do when they fly off? Same thing what seagulls do. And so therefore, when the seagull manager flies in, lands, is down for like 2 seconds, then they fly out and they dump their waste all over everybody and all the issues. And so the issue becomes cloudy. So again, as Gary said, you don't want to be seagull managers and you don't want to deal with seagull managers. If they are your subordinate, you need to teach them to stop doing that. Gary.
All right. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Yeah, those are all very salient points. The next one is called the empty chair syndrome, or the empty chair leadership lesson. And like, what does he mean? What is Gary talking about an empty chair? And I like this. There's a book called The Everything Store. And what they're doing is they're talking about Amazon. And Amazon, as you know, was started by Jeff Bezos. It started off as a bookstore where you can order books online. And now it's the Everything Store. You can virtually order anything you want. But what Jeff Bezos did was he created the empty chair in the conference room with his leadership group. And what he basically did was he assumed, or everybody in the room was to assume that the empty chair, they put a tag on it, is the customer. You had to assume that during that meeting that the customer was sitting there listening to what you were talking about and what was going to be for the best for the customer. So it was called as you can see on the bottom left there, is called the empty chair rule. And, think about you as a chief. If you're having a meeting with your staff or your chief officers, would you put a chair in the room and let your customer or your citizens sit there and listen to what you're talking about? And I bet you some of us may hesitate, because I've been in some of those meetings already. And the meetings are not about what's best for the citizens in the community, but what's best for the firefighter in the station, forgoing the needs of the community. And so we live in a time where we have multiple generations, and each one of them have their own priorities, their own value systems. And there are some generations that don't see others ahead of their needs. And So Jeff Bezos again created the empty chair rule, and think about it: if you were to put one of your citizens in the chair in your conference room as you discuss fire department operations or fire department needs or fire department administrative issues, and how would they react to that if they knew they were supporting your fire department with their dollars? The other thing he didn't allow, again, was no PowerPoints. Every meeting was, again, begin with silence. And he also had the two pizza rule. And two pizza rule is that you couldn't have more than enough people there that could eat two pizzas. Because we've all been to those meetings already where there's 25, 30 people in the room. And it just seems like everybody seems like they have to talk. So anyway, those are some of Jeff Bezos' rules for his leadership meetings. But I really liked the empty chair rule because that was reflective of the customer. And if we were to apply the same principle, it will be reflective of the citizen in our community sitting in our meetings and listening to what's going on. All right, I'm going to talk. The next one is one of my favorite subjects, is what dogs can teach us about leadership.
And that's Gary's dog, too.
And that's what I said. That's my dog. She's a real sweetheart, and she thinks she's human, and she acts like she's human. And sometimes I catch her trying to talk, and I think she thinks that she's human. So, but that is my dog. And there are lessons that we actually can learn from dogs about leadership. And again, this is one of the things you may have never heard at before. Again, here's my dog. You can see on the left, she loves to hug me. She loves to go on golf cart rides, and she likes to sleep on my belly. So anyway, we're very close, but we can learn from dogs about leadership. Because why? In order to communicate with our dogs, we have to be able to give them clear and concise and consistent communication. If we use different words, they learn the human language. If we use different words, they won't know what we're talking about. So we need to be clear and concise and use consistent communication with them, the same way we would with any of our firefighters. Dogs are always happy to see you. I ask you this question rhetorically: are you happy to see your firefighters if they're standing at your door? If you're not, then shame on you, because you should be excited to see your firefighters. You should be excited when your firefighters are at the door and want to talk to you, maybe not about a problem, but just talk to you. Maybe they have a personal issue, but if you are happy to see your firefighters, think about how the dog greets you when you come home. The dog is excited, their tail's wagging, they're jumping at the door. They're just purely, and it's not fake, they are truly excited to see you. We should have the same attitude with our firefighters. We should be excited about seeing our firefighters engaging with them.
Gary, as people who know me know that I'm not a fan of animals. They don't like me, I don't like them, a combination of all the above. But I got this story the other day about dogs are always happy to see you. So this came off of Facebook. So if it's 94 degrees in your community, you go out to a parking lot and the sun is out, and you park your car out there right underneath the sun, and you get your wife and your dog to come out. You open up your trunk, you throw your wife in the trunk, you throw your dog in the trunk, and you come back in 2 hours and you open up the trunk. Who will be happy to see you? It won't be your spouse.
No, it won't be my wife, I guarantee you. So, but I can guarantee my dog will be excited to see me. So
yes,
it is genuine too, John. It's genuine. It's not fake.
Right.
I love that story too, John. Lead with love. Theodore Roosevelt, who was one of our presidents, said, they don't want to know how much you know, they want to know how much you care. And that's absolutely true. Any of you who have been in a leadership position for any period of time, they don't care how much you know. They want to know that you care about them. They want to know that you care about their needs, their issues, their wants, the things about them. You want to learn about maybe their families. You want to become genuinely interested in them. So they want to know how much you care. Let's say dogs are interested too. They're very curious. So dogs are curious. Dogs are always curious. They're always sniffing around. They're always looking to see what's going on. I got one dog that all she does is sit in a certain area, so she can watch the whole room and actually look outside and watch what's going on. and because they're curious. And so you as a chief should be curious too about what's going on in your department. You should be asking questions. You should be, if you're a deputy chief, you should be asking questions what's going on in your shift or going on in your department. A battalion chief, if you're a company officer or here, you should be knowing what's going on with your company. Training is constant to stay on the cutting edge. We're constantly, the dogs, we know which dogs are trained. You see them with the military, you see them with police agencies, even people train their dogs at home. But it is not train them once and be done. They constantly have to go to training. Same way with the fire department, same way with firefighters. Just because you've trained them in the academy and they got their firefighter 1 and 2, doesn't mean that they're going to be in the cutting edge. We have skill sets that we have to stay cutting edge. That's taking the line off the truck within a certain amount of time, pulling a pre-connect. There are skills that have to be learned about moving line up 2, 3, 4 flights of stairs, unless you have a standpipe. But if you have to move it up the stairs, it's about positioning people at the corners and feeding the hose up the stairways. There are constantly things that we should be training about. I always like to tell people that if the baseball players and the football players have trained, and these are the professionals, if they can train every day during the season, certainly we need to be training as firefighters. And those are the professionals, and they know what time the game is, and they know what the field is going to look like. We never know when that bell's going to hit, and we don't know what the field is going to look like. So training is important, and dogs, again, are an example of that. So the next point is you get the best out of your dogs when you praise them. And this is one of my pet peeves. I will tell you, I don't know why we in the fire service are so adverse at telling firefighters that they've done an excellent job, or that we value what they did, or they did whether it's fighting a fire or the way they mop the floor, if it looks great, whatever. Of course, you want to be genuine about it too. But I value telling my firefighters how much I appreciated what they're doing or what type of job they did when they did an excellent job. But we're so adverse about that. But we're quick to criticize, are we not? We always seem to want to criticize people. But again, we get the best out of our dogs when we praise them, and we continually praise them, because they want to please us again and continue to please us. They learn behavior. They learn what is good behavior when we praise them. Another point about dogs is that dogs will cower when you raise your voice. That's a leadership lesson. So imagine if you are one that yells at your employees, that yells at your firefighters, that you're always raising your voice. And I've worked for people like that already, and it is not pleasant. It's a toxic environment. So just like a dog will cower, you will cower. Your firefighters will cower also, and at you raising your voice. Dogs are loyal. The question is, are you loyal to your firefighters and your organization? That almost goes back to the point before, is they don't want to know how much you know, they want to know how much you care. Again, that's a famous quote from Theodore Roosevelt. And what I like about dogs is when you're having a bad day, those dogs, they stay silent, they're non-judgmental, they're supportive, and always letting us know that they're there for us. Though they will cuddle up next to you. At least all the dogs I've had in my life, they've done that. They know when you're having a bad day. I don't know how they sense it, but they do. And the dog you saw in some of my pictures earlier, she is known for that. She knows when I might be upset about something. And of course, she's walking in the room right now. Hi, Rainey. She's walking in the room right now. She must have known her voice. Come here, baby. She must have known that. She must have known I was talking about her. But again, if your firefighters are having a bad day, be supportive. Stay silent. Don't judge them. Be supportive, and always let them know that you're there for them. So,
Gary, you talk about you get the best out of your dog when we praise them. It's just So you made a statement about we're pretty negative when we do with our people. I think we are negative as leaders because we want to put them, the firefighters, on the defense. Because if they walk in, and I was horrible at this. I got better as time went on, but I had to learn it the hard way. When they walk in, I make some comment about their hair, their pants, their shoes, whatever, which puts them on the defense. And they're going, oops, so they don't want to come to you in the future. But if you will say, hey, you look good this morning, I'm glad you're here. Hey, glad you showed up at training, so on and so forth, they will want more of that praise. We all have a need to be praised. We all have a need to see that appreciation that's coming from our leader. What did Vince Lombardi do? Vince Lombardi, I'll just say it, he beat the living daylights out of his guys. But he did that like one time out of 10. The other 9 times, he was patting them on the back, in those days, patting them on the butt, encouraging them, telling them what they had to do, telling them what they could do to get better, and most all of them listened to what he had to say because he was encouraging them. So you want to get loyalty out of your dog when you praise the dog, get loyalty out of your firefighters when you praise the firefighters.
All excellent points, John. And how ironic that you walked in here to give me a hug. So thank you, baby. All right. Let's talk about another leadership lesson you may have never heard about, and that's Napoleon in shining boots. So I can hear the wheels turning out there right now. What is Gary talking about Napoleon in shining boots? Well, it's very simple. Napoleon would get briefed by his generals and his marshals about the upcoming battles and the plans about those battles. He would always get briefed by them, but the only time he would allow them to brief him was when a corporal was shining his boots. So what's unique about Rainey? Be quiet now. She wants to talk to me. So anyway, the corporal was shining Napoleon's boots, and when the battle plan was explained to him by his generals and marshals, what he would do was turn and look at the corporal and say, do you understand the plan? And if the corporal understood the battle plan, Napoleon would put his blessing on it and tell him to go ahead and execute it. If the corporal did not understand the battle plan, he would basically tell him to go back and rework it. And it comes down to this. It's the KISS principle is what it comes down to. If you make things too complicated, basically, you're setting your firefighters up for failure. I can remember specifically working at a particular place that I'll leave nameless, but when I got there, they had an 86-page SOP just on incident command. And I said, do you expect everybody to know all 86 pages? They said, yes. And I go, there ain't no way someone's going to memorize all 86 pages of incident command. So as a result of that, they were setting up their officers for failure is what they were doing. And again, it's a very simple principle. It's almost like the KISS principle, but Napoleon deployed it in such a unique way that he would have a corporal basically give the blessing for any type of battle plan. All right. So moving on to the next one, let me talk about the next leadership lesson you may have never heard about. This is what Ronald Reagan and spilled water. So the story here is that when Ronald Reagan got shot, he was in the hospital. He had one of those, like a little jug or whatever it was with water, and he knocked it over. And it spilled on the floor. And the nurse walked in. Again, there was an agent. They got agents at the door. There was nobody in the room except Ronald Reagan. And the nurse walks in with the agent because the agents would accompany the nurses and doctors into the room, of course. And here's Ronald Reagan on all fours with a towel wiping up the water. And the nurse says, what are you doing? He says, I spilled the water. And the lesson here is that here's the man who is president of the United States. Here's a man who was near death because he had been shot in an assassination attempt. And it was not beneath him to get on all four knees and get a towel and clean up the water. And again, it gets back to us that I talked about earlier as chief officers. And that is, there should be no job, just like George Washington, there should be no job that is beneath us that we should not be willing to do to get the job done. So that's the story of Ronald Reagan in spilled water. All right, moving along, let's talk about the next one. Some of you may remember this one, but especially those that are as old as I am. And that is when AIDS first came about, and HIV first came about in the early or mid 1980s, and people were just scared to death. We didn't know much about the disease, and all we knew is that if you got the blood on you, that you could basically die. And we knew that a lot of the gay community was basically experiencing these deaths. And so people were scared to touch people. People were afraid. There was one quick story I'll tell you that I've heard that it blew me away. I'm sorry about the dog barking. Rainy, come here. Come here. I'm sorry, people. My wife's not here, else I had corralled. Basically, there's a story out of Denver that there was a car accident, and that basically someone, that was in the car accident had AIDS, and they were bleeding. And again, there was such as paranoia and such as the scare about AIDS and blood that basically they brought out the nuclear response team to take him out of the car and transport him to the hospital in their fully encapsulated suits. And then they brought out a street crew, again, in encapsulated suits. And what they basically did was they chiseled up the concrete where the blood was, put it all in safe containers, and they took it away, and they actually burned it at a facility where they burn nuclear waste. That's how paranoid we were about AIDS. I'm so sorry. Rainey, please. All right? I know she wants my attention. That's the other thing about dogs is they want your attention, just like our firefighters do sometimes. So, but here comes Princess Diana back in the 80s, and she came to a New York hospital, and she met with AIDS patients, and she broke the stigma. Basically, she broke the ice, and you can see in these pictures that she touched, shook hands, and actually hugged these AIDS patients, and the media picked up on this. And as a result of that, she actually catapulted awareness that it's okay that these are people with a disease, and it's okay if we interact with them, we shouldn't be paranoid. And as more and more information came out about AIDS, we certainly use body substance isolation to protect ourselves as we would with any other disease. But at the same time, that's a leadership lesson that really, where Princess Diana really stepped across that threshold and really catapulted our viewpoints and our thinking in a different direction. All right, let's talk about another leadership lesson here. And this is one of my favorites. I have a lot of favorites in here, but lessons from the Godfather movies. I love the Godfather movies. And of course, when Godfather 3 came out, I raced to the theaters. It was right around Christmas time. I was going to be in the theaters. I was there on the first day. I wanted to see it. I absolutely love the Godfather movies, and because there's just a lot of different things. With the storyline is great, the acting is great, all of it is just, they're great movies. The music is fantastic, especially in Godfather 3. Some of the opera music, it's in there. So the intermezzo and some of the other things but it's just good stuff. But there are leadership lessons from the Godfather movies, and again. One of the lessons is, we've heard this before, never hate your enemies. It clouds your judgment. And so, yeah, there are going to be people as a chief officer that are going to challenge you. There are people that are going to cause problems for you. It might be some of your firefighters, but you should never hate them. You should never get to the point where you despise them, because it clouds your judgment. And again, that factors into the emotion, not the intelligence. Another one is that if you remember, Sonny started talking when they're talking to Sollozzo was his name, about going into the drug business, and the Godfather interrupted Sonny, and he said, basically he didn't want him to talk, he wanted them to listen, and he basically said, don't ever tell anybody outside the family what you're thinking. You should listen to what you should do. And how often do we as chief officers listen to what our firefighters are saying? How often do we as chief officers listen to our city manager or our city officials or our council? And I always ask this question: how many of you actually listen to the point only so that you know that the person has stopped talking because you're ready to make your point? You're not even listening to what they're saying. All you're listening to is when they stop, where you can interject and start talking what you want to talk about, because we don't listen like we should. So again, that's another lesson from the Godfather movies. Some of the other ones are build a loyal crew, always be observant. Again, these are all things, if you're a Godfather movie fan, trust and loyalty, strategic planning. Look at when the Godfather knew that his time was limited, that he was going to die. He was planning everything out for Michael, including letting him know that whoever comes to him with making a deal is the traitor in the family. Strategic planning was, again, there's a lot of strategy and planning that's in the Godfather movies. Strong branding, delegation. If you look again, the Godfather was constantly delegating out tasks to others, including Luca Rossi, if you remember. He took care of a lot of stuff. Tom Hagen always took care of a lot of stuff for him. They treated everyone with respect in there. There's lessons about handling a crisis. And again, the final one is always expect the unexpected. All right, those are some of the lessons from leadership on the Godfather movies. This is another one that you may have never heard about. It's Ronald Reagan and Colin Powell. The story goes that Colin Powell he was chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and he's in Reagan's office trying to give him some briefing about some military matter. And Reagan's not paying attention to him. He's looking out the window, and he interrupts Colin Powell, and he says, "Look, the nuts I put out for the squirrels, they're coming to get them." And Colin Powell realized what the message was from Ronald Reagan. That is, I trust you. I value you. I'm not here. I don't need to be briefed on everything that you're doing. I don't have to micromanage you. I expect you as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs to carry out my directives. You don't have to come back and brief me unless you need my support. And so Colin Powell basically learned from that little lesson that if you are given a task by your boss, or if you're the boss, you don't have to micromanage your people. If you have trust and value in them, you allow them to carry out the job. And if they make a mistake, let's learn from that mistake and let's move on. Again, Colin Powell, I like a lot of the things that Colin Powell did in his career, the success that he had. This is where he's talking about here that basically Ronald Reagan, diverted and said, "Look, there's squirrels out in the rose garden here. I put the nuts out, and they're coming to get them." So Colin Powell learned that lesson very on. There's another one of Chairman Powell and Richard Chambers, who was a low-level auditor in the Secretary of State's office. And the story goes that Colin Powell wanted a briefing on the financial numbers for the department. He was the Secretary of State under George Bush, and he wanted some information on the State Department. And he asked from the low-level auditors to brief him. So this low-level auditor writes about this, that he basically spent days preparing to brief the Secretary of State on financial matters. And as he's getting ready to leave his office to go down and speak with Secretary Powell, there's a knock at his door, and who's coming? It's General Powell. General Powell came to see him. And Richard Chambers was so impressed at this that General Powell or Secretary Powell would come to see him instead of expecting a low-level auditor to come down to his office and visit with the Secretary of State on financial matters. So again, we have to be humble. We have to be genuine. We have to be, if we ever think that we're on a lofty pedestal in our positions, you can easily be knocked from those positions. So again, it's humble and treat others with respect is the lesson there. This is King Solomon. I think anybody that knows the Bible, knows anything about King Solomon, they know what the story goes. And it's basically that he made a decision to cut the baby in half because both women were claiming the child was theirs. So what it came down to was wisdom. There's wisdom in this leadership lesson. That is wisdom wanting to know or do the right thing. Because King Solomon knew the real mother would say, no, please don't cut the baby in half. So he wanted to make the right decision for the right reason. He made efforts to find the truth. He treated both with fairness, both parties who were quarreling about this. He used wisdom to diligently look for the truth hiding behind the lies. Because, as you know, if you've ever been lied to before by a good liar, they can be as convincing as a truth teller. And King Solomon also had the knowledge and the wisdom on how people will react to an unexpected surprise. And there was also wisdom in his decision on how to surprise people to expose a lie. So there's a lot of lessons in that single decision to cut the baby in half when both mothers were claiming the baby was theirs. All right, moving along. And John, I know we're running out of time, so I'm trying to push on here. I got a few more here to go. So this is a quick lesson that is about with Abraham Lincoln again, called 100 Horses. You may have never heard about this before, but Lincoln was briefed that the Confederates had, through the night, had broke into a camp, stole 100 horses, and also kidnapped the brigadier general. And Abraham Lincoln's comment was, well, how are we going to get those horses back? And the person who was briefing says, what about the brigadier general? And Lincoln said, you know what? I can replace that general in 5 minutes by promoting someone. I can't get those 100 horses back. So the lesson here is make sure that you have the people in place, but also make sure that you have the logistics and the proper resources to make the job work. You can have the best people and have them train well, but if they don't have the proper resources, they're not going to be able to carry out the job. So that's the leadership lesson there. This is called Pareto's principle. It's the 80-20 rule. And Pareto basically came up with this rule, and it seems to apply to a lot of different things. And it might fluctuate off to 80-20 a little bit, but we spend 80% of our time dealing with 20% of the problems. And, you may have some challenging employees in your department, and they might take up 80, they're only 20% of them, maybe 10%, maybe 5%. I'm not sure what your numbers are, but I bet you spend an inordinate amount of time dealing with that 5, 10, or 20% of the people that cause all your problems. So his principle was basically that we spend most of our time dealing with the least amount of problems or least amount of issues. And so as a result of that, he actually talked about flipping it. And I've had people say, hey, I got a problem employee and I got a captain that's not motivated, a company officer not motivated. I can't get him motivated. What should I do? And my response always shocks them. I say, forget them. Don't worry about them. You're ignoring all the other people in your department that you should be mentoring and coaching and preparing. And my experience over my time, 45 plus years in this business, is that you're not going to fix that person who is poorly motivated. You can do all you want. You can do all kinds of high behavioral stuff and all kinds of issues and threaten, and it just doesn't work. In the meantime, you've neglected the other 80% of the people in your department that you could be advancing and coaching and developing and mentoring. So that's the 80-20 rule. Here's the one again with Colin Powell. Colin was our Secretary Powell, General Powell, whatever term you want to use him. Whenever he had a meeting with people, he would not have a desk in the way. He chose to have the no desk rule. Why? Because he felt desk basically caused inhibitions. Desk basically put up a barrier. Desk does not bring out the best in people on discussing issues, was his thought, no matter how close you are. Because there's this setting that the boss is sitting behind the desk and the person sitting out front is the subordinate. He wanted people to freely think and be able to express ideas and thoughts, and so he would have the no desk rule. So that's a leadership lesson you may have never heard about before also. Here's another Colin Powell story. That there was a parking garage at the State Department that was very small for the amount of staff they had. And so the parking attendants, who were mostly people who had migrated here from other countries, were the parking lot attendants. They would park the cars. And they would have to double park, triple park, and just stack up cars in the garage. And if your car was close to the front, you could get your car and get out right away. But if they parked your car way in the back and they had to move 4 or 5 cars to get to your car, there was an issue with that. And one day Colin Powell asked these parking lot attendants, why is it, that some people, you park the cars all the way in the back and then other cars are parked up front, you can get out right away. And the parking lot attendant told Secretary Powell, it's very simple. If you say good morning to us, you ask us how our day's going, or ask us how our kids did at the soccer game last night, we park your car up front. If you ignore us, if you grunt at us, if you are unpleasant to us, we'll park your car all the way in the back. And it's going to take you a half hour to 45 minutes when you're ready to leave work to get to your car and go home. So again, it comes down to how you treat people and how you react to people, no matter what status they are. So Colin Powell did tell this to a senior staff about what was happening in the parking garage. So it says you can never err by treating everyone in the building with respect, thoughtfulness, and a kind word. And so that's why they started treating people nicely, and we got their cars moved up front. Because Colin Powell's thought was it always shows more kind. You should always show more kindness than seems necessary, because the person receiving it needs it more than you may ever know sometimes. And to the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be the world. That was what his sayings were. With that said, John, I think we're about at our time limit here. So I want to thank everybody who stayed online, and thank you for giving me the gift of your time and allowing me to just share some ideas and thoughts with you about leadership lessons you may never have heard about before.
Yeah. Gary, thank you very much. Do you have your email? There you go. Say, there's Gary's phone number and email address, his website. You can go get his books off Amazon. He does a podcast almost every day on a variety of things. So I encourage you to go contact him, get in contact with him. He has great insight and a great perspective that he's willing to share with you. So Gary, I do thank you for coming on here. I know it's like everybody else, we're all busy. So get somebody to say, hey, I'll come do this for an hour. Well, it's not just an hour. It's preparation, presentation, application, evaluation. It's all those 4 points. So, but I would end this because you started right at the end there. You talk about the 80-20 rule. And I think that is such an important process. And my comment would be is do not neglect your 80%, because the 20% are the troublemakers. Get them out of your office. Get them off of your desk. Get them out of your kitchen, off of your kitchen table. Pay attention to the 80%, because I believe if you ignore the 80%, they're going to want to go be like the 20%. Not all of them, but some of them. So with that, I will wrap this thing up. Our technology lady, Sherry, will be signing us off here. You got Gary's email address. Please, please, please contact him, and have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.